Welcome to another episode of the Ecommerce podcast. I'm here together with Dayu and myself, Simon. As a thought leader in China fulfillment solutions, we partner with clients to scale their business the right way. And we do this on our podcast, the Ecommerce podcast. Today, we're going to go through a few topics that are really top of mind that we've seen coming up over and over. And we want to make sure that we share the knowledge that we share with our clients here on this podcast. Tune in for more. On this podcast, we've been talking a lot about Shein and Temu and how you can learn about this. And that means that when people think about Shein, especially Shein, they think about fashion. Obviously, we have a point of view on how do we feel about fashion itself from a fulfillment perspective, because there's a lot of nuance to it. And we want to also make sure that we're addressing the right clients, but also addressing the right pain points that come with fashion, because it sounds very simple how Shein has optimized the supply chain, but there's a little bit of more nuance to it, I guess. So maybe you can help us dive a little bit deeper, and I will give my point of view on this as well.
Yeah, my quick reaction to fashion brands is probably don't start one, especially if you're doing D2C e-commerce. I think it's a little bit different if you already have a large following. Look, I mean, if you're Kim Kardashian and you're starting Skims, I think that's a little bit different. But the thing about fashion is there are so many SKUs. If you can think of a great way where you can start a fashion brand without so many varieties of things, then it could actually work. I mean, I've seen brands that maybe like they just sell like one type of t-shirt, maybe in different sizes. But again, unless you have some kind of original brand following, you're not going to be able to easily start a fashion brand that doesn't have just a ton of SKUs. Because look, when you shop fashion, you want variety. And not only variety, there's sizes, right? Every single SKU that you normally think about a product, you have to times that by 5 or 10, depending on how many sizes that you actually offer. So first, it creates a lot of complexity in your supply chain and factory management and fulfillment. And Simon, you have a lot of experience there, so maybe you could talk about that first. And I have some thoughts even on the branding and marketing end as well.
Yeah, it really also depends on the journey of the brand itself. So when you really look at, besides for the SKUs, the sizes, the colors, their seasonalities, that is very important. Whether it's a hoodie for the winter or it's swimwear for the summer, and also which markets you're targeting. Whether it's Australia that has opposite seasons, it might be also a difficulty to be able to scale globally for all of the brands that you have in mind. The inventory itself is not moving enough for a fulfillment company to be happy. When it's a storage location, it doesn't matter. But when it comes to fulfillment, especially the way we operate, it's about goods need to come in, stay there temporarily, and then go out. And that's extremely hard to predict when it comes to fashion, because you're not sure what is going to sell out. Maybe a cool example, we had a call with a prospect. He's Dutch. He came to me and he said like, okay, I want to launch a slipper brand. I said, great. So what is the slipper brand all about? Well, I'm not sure, but it needs to be comfortable slippers. Okay, but who are you going to target? Is it the ones that come home tired from work, or are the ones that just want to get up from the bed and they want to have some comfort? Or is it the ones that just want to work from home? And I don't know. I haven't thought about it. It's well, okay, that's where you start, because if you really want to go a fashion brand, it has to be, like you said, more niche. You have to already have a very specific scope what you want to serve. Then it could make sense. Like you want to have comfy t-shirts, or you want to do hoodies, or you want to do bags, or you want to do socks. Socks also has sizes, but they're limited sizes. In that sense, you want to reduce the complexity of the product, and then you need to know your client. You need to know the customer, what it is that you want to solve for them, and how you're going to reach them. And that's something that is not something you think of in the beginning, because our clients are brand owners and they're not a multi-product store where you have men, women, kids, all these categories, from jackets, from socks, from underwear to it. That's just not suitable, because you will have rows and rows and rows of inventory lying around collecting dust and not converting. And it brings a lot of complexity for you to manage it, especially if you would run it globally in maybe even multiple warehouse locations. It's tedious. And the way I guess Shein is able to do it is their predictability, but also their scale. They're doing really 40,000, I think, orders per day to Europe alone. which I just spoke to one of my friends like the other week, and who mentioned that, which is a completely different scale. And therefore you have also a little bit more variety possibilities that are still converting and still leaving the warehouse. But there is always an excessive amount of inventory that stays behind. And then the question is, what do you want to do with it? And that's a difficult one for most of the brand owners.
Yeah, see, the question of scale is really important because obviously there's big fashion brands out there, right? I mean, not only Shein, but traditional brands like Zara or H&M. Businesses make a lot of money being fashion brands. However, if you think about something like Shein, if you think about something like Zara, people go either to the Shein web store or they go to like a Zara physical store, not necessarily because of specifically trying to buy one single item. They go because they associate that brand with the variety of clothing that they want to purchase. Now, you can't build that from scratch. Well, it'd be very difficult to build that from scratch. I think one misunderstanding that I see sometimes is because I've been talking about how Shein and Temu, but Shein for fashion has been really changing how people think about China fulfillment. And I think some misunderstand that as, hey, you should build a Shein as well. Don't build a Shein. You can't compete with Shein right now. All right. And you can't build that feeling of someone wanting to shop at your store because of variety from scratch. It just doesn't really make sense. Shein spent a ton of money to invest to get to where it is, and they started small as well. Look, e-commerce is already pretty difficult. Usually what we see the best way to get into building a good brand without as much risk is creating some kind of hero product or a hero product line. And it's just very difficult to do with fashion these days. If you look way back in the time, it was possible. I mean, I mean, reminded of like Sarah Blakely Spanx. Spanx is a huge brand right now. It's like $1 billion brand, but it started with, you know, like just a couple of offerings of leggings. That was before there were a lot of, or maybe that was before like really any kind of big online presence in terms of fashion, but that was the opportunity then. I don't think the opportunity is quite the same anymore. And it's just so difficult to have that hero product line to gain that brand loyalty in the first place. Unless you have the ability to invest a lot of money, fashion is very difficult these days. So it's not just fashion. It's about the complexity of choice in terms of SKUs for your customer as well. So I used to be a consultant at the Boston Consulting Group, consulting for large retail brands, including grocery stores. Grocery stores are actually some of the toughest retail businesses to make money because the margins are so low. So they're super optimal around testing everything. And over again, there is an insight that shows that when you have too much choice for a customer, then that actually decreases either their propensity to buy right away or in an online setting, the conversion rate. It can be counterintuitive, where I remember working with more dropshippers, more pure dropshippers back in the day, where they see like an AliExpress listing that has like, 20 different colors. And back then it was easy enough just to add all of them to your store. And then it just created a big mess in terms of managing that inventory. And I would speak with them and I'm like, look, well, first of all, we don't want to help you fulfill like 20 different things where half the things aren't even selling anything at all. I would actually bet them. I was like, hey, look, if you just reduce your SKU count to like your top like 5 best sellers, you're going to sell just as much, you're going to convert higher, and you're going to have much simpler fulfillment as well. Some of them didn't believe me, but I was like, well, it's easy enough to take off SKUs. And actually, almost always, that is exactly what happened. Less SKUs, less choice means an easier buying process. But this is where fashion will also complicate things as well, because you have to have choice in sizing as well, right? So that inherently makes it, the variety that you need to build a fashion brand already makes it complicated enough in terms of too many SKUs. Okay, what color do I want? Do I want brown or slightly lighter brown? But then, okay, well, am I an XL or an L or an XXL, right? And then you have to go look at the measurements, and everyone knows that different fashion brands are different as well. So fashion brands tend to be very difficult to actually convert unless you have a loyal brand following, unless you have loyal customers who already know their exact size for your brand offering. Because otherwise, you're just going to get lower conversion because of the amount of choice. And even after they convert, they choose the wrong size, or they don't really like this specific shade of brown. You're going to get more returns as well, or more requests for refunds as well. Overly complicated, I think. If you have $10 million to invest in a brand, or investors who invest $10 million in your brand, then I think it's doable, right? I mean, I think it's possible. But if you are a ambitious e-commerce entrepreneur thinking about your next project, I don't think fashion is it.
Yeah, so you have to realize that we love the supply chain side of the Shein and Temu. That's kind of what we're replicating for these D2C brands that we're servicing. But you also have to understand that what the model for Shein, actually the business model, is more than optimizing the supply chain. They're collecting tons of data on clicks, on likes, on views, on everything that comes with their platform, but also with the social media channels that they're running. And they also have the local market that validates certain products that are scaling and worth testing, because they also are active on the domestic market in China, in mainland China. And that also creates opportunity for them to learn about demand, try it, and then fail, and then replicate it, but also just see how much traction is there online. And most D2C brands, they have limited resources and time available to engage with the data, to collect the data, to capture it, to analyze it, to transform that into a business strategy. And you don't really have to as well if you focus on the target audience that you want to serve, because you will learn more and more about them in detail.
One good point as well is Shein is not how crazy successful it is just simply because they ship from China. They leverage it as a foundation for growth, at least, but they're doing things fundamentally differently because of their ability to ship quickly from their factories directly to the fulfillment center. This is where they're totally crushing what was previously the fashion darling, which is Zara. Zara's model was all about fast fashion, but still their fashion had to still get to their hundreds, or I think it's a couple thousand of stores worldwide, which takes a lot more lead time, which means there's a lot less flexibility in planning for their inventory and maybe having to overstock, or not selling out, having to destroy inventory or selling out. Whereas Shein, they can get their clothes from their factories to their fulfillment warehouse in like 2 days, which means that they can move rapidly. They can actually purchase as little as like 100 units of like a new launch product and then scale it up in like a week if it actually really does well. That's crazy, right? And I've been saying this actually. If you don't learn from Shein that they buy and sell clothing, okay? Learn from Shein how do you radically optimize your supply chain through really pushing your ability to leverage China fulfillment the right way. And if you think about it that way, then using China shipping is not actually just a simple optimization problem that usually supply chain is. It's not about saving 5%. It could be even a little bit more expensive as well. But it's about like actually getting stuff to your customers, 10 times faster because you can launch your goods faster. It's about having 10 times less investment in inventory because you're just constantly replenishing your warehouse. It's about 10 times more flexibility in adjusting to demand spikes or, demand lows, again, because of that very short lead time. So don't start a fashion brand, please. Well, you can if you want, but I warned you otherwise. But learn from Shein deeper into its model of actually leveraging China fulfillment as opposed to what exactly it sells.
Just one little nuance about the sizing stuff. Global sizes there's not one standard. So China has different standards, UK, US, Europe. You will see that as well when you go shopping in a store. You will see that different size labels per country as well. If you advertise it online, it's fine. But what you advertise online, the consumer also would like to see in the tag of the item they're buying. So if, for example, they purchase an L and it says XXL in the label itself, they not even try it on, they will just return it. And then cutting out that label, which is then maybe just cut it out of the item itself, would cause complexity for the fulfillment, because how do they recognize it was XXL or it is L? And if you do change it to L, then the whole SKU has to change in the system. It's a little technical, but it is something that is very real when you're dealing with different sizes of similar products. You need to have an operational setup where you can recognize. So that means also for our warehouse, it could be that same sizes of an item are not located next to each other to avoid picking the wrong one. There is always a chance to do that. And you obviously try to solve that with the scanning and the barcoding, but it's not always an easy way to recognize. And we saw very easily as well with a drop shipping mindset, if you run out of inventory for one color and you purchase that same color somewhere else, it's never exactly the same color. So a blue is a blue, yes, but it's maybe not the same blue that you were envisioning. Because on the picture, it might look the same, but in real life, it's not. So that quality control, whether the thickness of the quality, the color itself, if you don't have the inventory, it's impossible. I'm telling you, it's impossible to control unless you do a very strict quality control at the factory. And the CM model is 90% or more of that factory's production is for them. There are no other clients that they serve most of the time. It's very tailored to their operations. There is no factory that's only producing for you, and therefore you can have that built into the supply chain that the quality is guaranteed. Because if the quality is not guaranteed, that factory will have to close because they're not delivering the standard they agreed upon. Most brands don't have that impact on a factory to be able to have them forced closing their factory or something worse than that. And that's something that's really good to keep in mind. If you want to scale something, it has to be a sustainable scale that you can go very focused and globally without too many iterations on the product.
Now, moving on from Shein or large retail brands, let's actually talk a little bit about some of the more intricacies of working with our clients. First of all, we actually do have a lot of direct conversations with our clients, and we do try to provide our own point of view and advice where we can about how they might be able to grow. So partly in terms of just overall business, tips about the supply chain. But one of the things that you're talking about is, well, sometimes some of our clients and just entrepreneurs in general might need a little bit help on their mindset, how they think about just business in general. What are your thoughts on that, Simon?
When it comes to e-commerce, there's a lot of information available. So you can go on YouTube and you can collect all this information. Because to get things started, when you just want to start your first e-commerce store or brand, there's enough information available for you to get things started, to get the right information, to get everything set up, get everything running. That you can do by yourself. Very often then misunderstood is that because you've done that and you maybe succeeded in that, you will therefore be able to scale your business. And that mindset is a limiting mindset because you will run your business based on the standards that you set, but you don't even know whether these are the right standards because all of our standards in our mindset are at a level that we can cope with or can imagine or can dream, but the bar can be so far much higher than what we actually think. And then the good examples are every year we attend these Availio World conferences. We normally give at least one ticket to one of our clients, bring them along and expose them. And we always are very specific on who we bring along because it needs to be someone that is all in on their business. They have a good foundation, but they have no network to grab the knowledge from others. We bring them to this event, this AW in this case, but it could be any other event that we attend or have presence at. And then we expose them to our clients, to our partners, to other e-com brands, and let them have conversations. And 100 out of 100 of them came back full of new ideas, full of tools and tricks that they haven't used. Thinking, 100 orders a day is a lot. Then meeting someone that does 1,000 orders a day, like, oh, it's possible. And they just feel energized. They feel energized. There are more people like me, and they're doing it better than what I'm currently doing. I need to think bigger. I need to step up my game. I can do this, but it's not going to be on information that you find online. It's about interacting, engaging, asking questions, being curious, and being also valuable. Because in every conversation, there is some information you give or you get, and you want to give something back to the other person as well. So it's never about stealing things, stealing ideas from other people. It's about getting inspired, getting tips and tricks, and making that community alive by sharing what works, because there's no competition when you build your online brand that is focused on your target audience, your brand. It's your uniqueness, it's your DNA, so to say, and it cannot be replicated. So it's very interesting to see how our clients are thriving after they attend an event with us, just because they get exposed to so many new ideas. And I think that's something, mindset-wise, too many digital nomads, they think, I can live the life, I can have my freedom here on time, location, financially, but it doesn't mean that you can scale as far as you can, because there's a limiting belief always.
And, we both come from a world where we were either working with or at least talking with a lot of more traditional dropshippers. And especially earlier in the day, years ago when dropshipping first started, everyone was learning from YouTube, everyone was kind of doing their own thing. And there actually tends to be this unhealthy amount of just competition and sense of privacy, as if you talk about what you're doing, then someone else is going to steal it and therefore they're going to outcompete you. So first of all, you don't know that much, right? At that point, like you learned all of your knowledge from YouTube and maybe testing your own ads, right? So everything you learned at that point is not even that much. It's not that valuable. And honestly, like if something in a conversation that you let out someone somehow is going to kill your business because someone could just take it right away, then that's probably not a scalable business idea in the first place. And, you know, I say this very frankly, and that's exactly why that there was a lot of more traditional dropshippers who thought they could do it themselves, digital nomads who thought all they needed was YouTube, maybe a course, and they could just optimize for their own thing and then continue growing. And almost all of them are not anymore. They moved on to something else. Now, a lot of them have continued to succeed, but those are the ones who started actually opening up their minds and actually learning from what's out there and also mutually sharing value. Look, it's obviously not always necessary you share value to get value, but then if if you're just getting value, then why would someone want to have a conversation with you, right? So that's a very important thing as you think about networking and actually getting value. The more that you give, the more value that you actually get. And especially these days, a lot of the actual strategies around how to scale your ads, your store in general, your brand in general, it's very difficult to actually apply it directly if you're not literally the exact same business, not the exact same brand. Sure, back in the day, like 7-10 years ago, like the easy times of drop shipping where you just literally take a product from AliExpress, copy the ads, and you make $1 million, right? I mean, it did happen, but that's not the case anymore. Don't learn, kind of from those bad habits and be kind of too inwards looking. In economics, there's a concept called local versus global optimization. So imagine you're climbing a mountain and you think it's the peak and you're trying to go for that peak of the mountain, right? But maybe that's what's called a local optimal, where that peak is still 10% the peak of like the actual highest peak out there. So if you're just inwards looking to yourself, or maybe just like really focused on your very small group of like, friends, contacts, then almost certainly you're going to be stuck in a local maximum where you're not even possibly even considering the fact that you could be 10 times higher or even more than that. And that kind of goes to your point, Simon, around like, well, we have clients who do like 100, 200 orders per day, and they meet other clients who do 2,000 orders per day. And it's like, wow, okay. First of all, it's possible, right? It's obviously possible, but what they're doing is different. And it's important to start to being honest to yourself. Okay, what are they doing that's different? Where am I doing that's actually limiting that I could actually be better at, right? And another point around that is it doesn't even have to be the same industry. Actually, the more that you can actually learn from other industries, other disciplines where you can apply it to your own business, sometimes that's where the real magic happens. I'll give you an example of that where I used to be a product manager developing free-to-play mobile games. So free-to-play mobile games literally means that you're downloading for free. So whoever's marketing that game is losing money on day one or day zero. So at the time we were acquiring users for or gamers for like $4. But then we project in 6 months, they'll make $15 back. So that's like where that LTV and profit really comes in, right? And it's actually because of my experience there is where I am so keen on this idea of not focusing on just first-time profits, whether it's actually how we run Ecommerce. We really focus on the long-term longevity and the long-term value of our clients to us, as opposed to like nickel and diming something. Or when we discuss with clients as well, I always tell them, hey, don't focus so much on trying to be as profitable as possible in your first purchase, not just on AOV, but build your LTV. And that's where the real magic happens. That's where you build a real sustainable brand. And all of that, the basic learning from that was not from e-commerce. It was actually from seemingly a completely different industry, mobile gaming.
So this is very interesting because we have a luxury. We work with these solopreneurs that have built it into a D2C brand and are scaling it or maybe even adding more brand. We also have another client base that actually are sophisticated companies with hundreds of people employed. And there we also sometimes see this limited mindset just because they have done it a certain way for years and it has worked. And why change it? One of these examples are, I always fulfilled from the US. It's working. Why should I fulfill also from China? Or I always buy inventory in every quarter. Why should I now suddenly do it for weekly? Because it sounds like a lot more work. There's a lot of other depths where the limiting belief is always there, whether you at a department or whether you work for, you are the business yourself. It is something interesting, but the bottlenecks are a little bit different in the mindset because obviously if you are the owner of the business, you're probably more willing to make a difference that has impact on your balance sheet, bottom line at least. And if you work for as an employee for a company, there might be other incentives that are more KPI driven, that are actually set by the company, by the board, by the management itself. This is what we want to achieve this year. And getting that alignment and getting them educated is always a little bit challenging because it's not always purely the metrics itself. It is what Dayu just described, the LTV of it. It's not per se, I need to be profitable this year. It's about, I need to be profitable for 5 years, 10 years, or maybe even longer. How do we achieve that? The difficulty, I would say, that we found for working with these more sophisticated companies with hundreds of employees, it's different. It's not about them Googling things on YouTube and getting educated because they have a scope, they have focus, they do procurement, they do the legal side, they do the logistics, they do the supply chain, whatever that is, and making sure it works in sync. I think that's something that we actively also participate in and making sure we're having the right conversation with the right individuals to be able to make things more fluid. Because that's the way for China fulfillment to work, is to make it more fluid on what's in the inventory, when to fulfill, what to fulfill, all these details.
Yeah, so actually now talking about these bigger companies, personally, I feel sometimes the bigger companies, the biggest companies, are actually stuck in more ways than a solo entrepreneur, or at least like they have less flexibility. And it's fair. Like, look, I've worked for some of the biggest companies in the world. I've consulted for some of the biggest companies in the world. Trust me, consulting for a Fortune 500 company can be a huge pain sometimes because they're incredibly inefficient. So, that's something that is actually quite unique about solo entrepreneurs who are actually ambitious and who are actually willing to learn and to adapt. But the larger companies, especially when they have many different departments, and especially when, some companies, they think that their specialty may be more on the brand or marketing or sending traffic. Often they start thinking about supply chain optimization as more of an afterthought, or they more purely think of it as a cost exercise. How do I lower my price by like 2%, right? Which is all possible. But this is also related to, like, you should understand your entire value chain as well, whether you're a solo entrepreneur or you're the CEO of a bigger company. So what I mean is that in this example, understanding how supply chain works relates with China fulfillment, how to optimize it, could actually fundamentally completely change even a large company's financials. More specifically, when you start thinking about your balance sheet or the inventory that you actually hold. The way that factories generally work is they purchase materials, they purchase other components, boxes, etc., right? And then they produce. The production part or the assembly part can actually be the fastest, or usually is the fastest depending on the product. It's usually sourcing the other products or the other components, planning for the production run sometimes. Now, especially larger companies, more traditional companies, they're actually used to working in units of a container or multiple containers. Like that's usually their smallest unit, right? That could be 50,000 units or something, but they're only selling like 1,000 a week, maybe, right? So we've had a lot of conversations for them, like, oh, look, you could technically just send us like 1,000 every week or 2,000, every couple of weeks. You could actually optimize your production a lot more than we're doing right now. And then actually they will tell us, oh, we're optimizing already because we're buying either bigger batches or smaller batches. Like, no, that's not what I actually mean. It's actually possible that you work with your factory so that you might have the terms or the discounts for a 50,000 unit purchase, and you put down a small deposit and they produce, some thousands every week. And why is that? Because depending on the factory, they're probably not able to produce 50,000 at a time anyways. Maybe they ideally only produce 1,000 at a time. And understanding that, and actually understanding not just you can do that, but the why of doing it, the nuances of how factories actually work. And this is for solo entrepreneurs as well, because a lot of times we do see a lot of solo entrepreneurs who are like just smaller businesses really focus maybe too much on just the marketing. The marketing is important. Don't get me wrong. If you can't market, you can't sell, then you don't have a business, right? But the supply chain, as I always say, is always half your business. Sometimes at least half your business, right? For example, Shein, I think Shein supply chain is more than half the business in terms of what actually is the valuable piece that helps them crush it versus the competitors. You think about that way, and you start to more deeply understand how the supply chain from the factory, from sourcing to fulfillment actually works. This is where you can start to actually understand some more novel, more creative levers that you haven't been aware of that you can pull. It's not just about getting 2 containers as opposed to 1, right? Or getting like a smaller order.
And I want to emphasize, this is not a theoretical model that we're describing here. We have clients that are doing this, solopreneurs and serious sized companies that are actually running this business as we are sharing it right now. And we just want to make it available for other people in the industry. But I also want to invite you that if you are attending an event that we are at as well, because you can follow us online on multiple channels, make sure to reach out. We're happy to introduce you to companies that actually are implementing what we're preaching right now on this podcast, so you can hear their story. And obviously, you might think, oh, you guys are pitching something. We are not. We really honestly want to educate, and we're happy to introduce where we see fit. But it is something that needs to be an honest introduction where we can actually look each other in the eye and we can actually see the value and that someone is giving and also receiving. And it's never a one-way flow, nor does our clients also interact with each other this way. It is something that is really durable and it's focused on the long term. That's something that we want to cherish as well, but we're happy to get you inside the circle if you're open to it, or you can be part of our events in the future. But also listen to our podcast. Also look up for me on LinkedIn. This last few months, I've been very active on LinkedIn. And we have a very cool announcement as well about this, because it's not just going to be me now being visible, but actually Dayu has reorganized his calendar, his agenda to also make himself more available and educate. And I think the angles are very interesting, because me coming more from a supply chain background, shipping small parcels from China already for 12 plus years. And Dayu has a very strong passion of building a brand, but also scaling it the right way. These are going to be very interesting angles to follow, in my opinion. But maybe Dayu, you can share a bit more of what you have in mind for 2025.
Yeah, so thank you for teeing that up. So as many of you might have known already, I did actually run the Ecommerce YouTube channel actually years and years ago. That was back when we were still serving the next level up from drop shipping. It was never traditional drop shipping, but my message was always, hey, drop shipping is not the same as shipping from China. You can ship from China without that pure traditional and all the issues of traditional drop shipping. That was where, I mean, look, I'll be totally frank. That was a marketing channel for Ecommerce as well. It brought a lot of traffic into interest in what I was saying and also what Ecommerce does. And that was one of the things that helped build our business. So I'll be frank, look, I didn't want to just be a YouTuber, right? Like I didn't grow up wanting to be a YouTuber. What happened was that Ecommerce started doing very well and we simply didn't need it anymore. That's something that I'm very proud of. And Simon, you're part of helping Ecommerce become very stable as kind of just a great company, a great service for our clients as well. So thank you for that too. But then I realized that, okay, look, I don't really need to be creating YouTube videos. Honestly, like especially near the end of my YouTube creation days, it got a little bit too complicated because I kind of had this misguided idea that, oh, I need a fancy camera. I needed like fancy graphics and things like that. And it became a little bit of a chore for me. But more recently, I realized that I was missing something in that what I really enjoyed actually about that part of my career was the providing value, the ability to provide value to others. Now, we have a lot of direct conversations with our clients. So naturally, I really enjoy providing what value I can to our clients, but that's hard to scale. I can't speak with everyone here, everyone listening. And I've decided to get back into just value creation, not even just content creation. I mean, the output is going to be content. So part of it started doing with this podcast. This is something that, and especially this format that we're doing right now, is something that Simon and I don't have to prepare that much for. We can just talk about important topics top of mind that we hope is valuable for our listeners out there. Not fancy as you guys watch this. It is not super edited. It's just Simon and I talking, and we will continue with that as well. And I will also, well, Simon and myself both will create, just kind of short form value, like little videos here and there. Maybe I go back to just standing in front of like a PowerPoint deck and just focusing on nothing sexy, nothing, too pretty, nothing fancy. That's not what we are as, people or just Ecommerce as a brand, right? And we both just want to just genuinely provide value out there. So that's something that Simon has been doing already over the last year, and it's something that, especially looking at what Simon was doing, I was also itching to get back into it as well and being able to kind of create my own without overthinking things. So by the time that you listen to this podcast, it's probably going to be at least January already. So that's when I will actually start launching my own separate Facebook page so I can separate it from my personal profile. Probably going to be on YouTube, on LinkedIn as well. We haven't totally decided yet, but look out for just more raw, direct value from both of us, and really appreciate any feedback you guys have, any comments you guys have, any requests for any kind of direction that you want us to go to. One direction we won't go to is probably going to be too much marketing. We're not really marketing experts. And one thing that we determined not to do is really light hype kind of content. I don't think we're ever going to do, hey, top 10 products to source from China kind of thing, that kind of stuff. We really want to focus on really deep, more advanced value for those who are already maybe seeing some success, some traction, but are really looking for a kind of variety of information that is going to help you maybe fill in some gaps that you have, or maybe help you realize or see things that you haven't really even thought about, and really expand your horizons as well. So look out for that. And I assume, depending on where you're looking at this, we'll probably have some links below for you to follow too.
This is also an invitation, because I know when I have a call with someone who says, hey, I saw your LinkedIn post, but it wasn't liked or anything. So the visibility is also there. So also when you think of creating value, don't let yourself be misguided that you create value, therefore it needs to be liked by someone in any social media app. Just be confident that when you think you have value to offer, share that. It's really an invitation to share whatever value you want to have in the space you're active in, because actually more people are watching it than you think. I'm getting this on a weekly basis. Hey, I see you're doing your work on LinkedIn. It's great. Really like the effort. I don't see their likes or their comments. And that's also not what we're doing it for. It's not about how many likes I get. Obviously, we want to reach more eyeballs because we think there's value in our message. So if you do think our message is very valuable, please, I do want to invite you to help us to spread that news, to do like it or comment it or share the podcast episode with someone else. It is really appreciated because it comes from a really genuine place of educating the market. And I think the shifting is really towards China fulfillment and doing it the right way. And there's so many different ways to do it. And we want to help our industry to evolve. So really, please do share this episode, or let us check our post on YouTube or on LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever that is that you're active at, because that will be deeply appreciated. And we're happy to engage with you. If you have a topic on mind, we would love to feature that on our episode. We also have openings for guests to join our podcast, but it has to be very specific, knowledgeable facts that we want to educate. It's not just we're going to just blurt out information. We want it to be very tailored to what we believe is value.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. We're not doing this just to bring brand awareness to Ecommerce. I mean, it helps, but that's not it. I mean, I've started multiple companies. Simon, you've been part of multiple companies, like big and small at different stages as well. And it's hard. Like it's really hard to gain traction. And I feel blessed that Ecommerce is kind of at that place where it's just a great company in itself. As I frankly told Simon and our team, like, look, even if we don't have a single new client, I'd be happy just serving our existing clients and helping them grow as well. Now, everyone wants more business, obviously. However, my point is, at this point, I feel very blessed. And, thank you for everyone here also who has supported my channel before or supported Simon recently. And now I just feel like I feel fulfilled to just get some of our experiences out. We've gone through a lot, and we've seen it firsthand, like just everyone here, like Simon and myself, and a lot of folks at Ecommerce as well, and as well as some of our clients that we network with, like we rolled our hands up, like we rolled our sleeves up, whether we liked it or not. As an entrepreneur or as a early founding team, you just kind of have to do everything. And a lot of times it is hard. You learn a ton. You fail more often than you succeed, and you feel blessed about the successes. And part of that feeling blessed is this feeling that, we do want to give back. Part of it also is, given our varied experiences, we probably will have just a variety of topics that we talked about. It's not just going to be about shipping from China. It's not just going to be managing a warehouse. A lot of it is that, because that's where we have a lot of experience in, but we also have a lot of experience in elsewhere as well that I do think that will be valuable for others to be able to at least experience and be able to have some takeaways in how it applies to your business as well.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast episode. Do check us out on different channels. We really appreciate you listening all the way till the end, and see you on the next one.